If you want to get better at League, stop trying to prevent bad habits. Many beginners in any skill tend to think of it as a fast track to improvement, skipping over all the pitfalls that other people went through, but in reality, you're actually going to be making your improvement take far longer than it should. I'm going to go over many different reasons for why that's the case in this video, along with what you should be doing instead to see more efficient progress. Preventing a bad habit is not actionable. It isn't something that you do, it's something that you don't do. This is bad because it's not something that you can effectively practice. Creating a new habit is actionable and typically is going to be associated with a trigger. For example, looking to ward whenever you know that you're going to be pushing up soon. The trigger in this instance is pushing past the middle of lane. You want to prevent a habit, but in reality, if you try to prevent it, you're not actually producing a new habit. You're just trying to not do a bad thing. So then what do? You don't have a solution habit to replace it with. So you're going to either continue to the bad habit anyway, or just sit around doing nothing at best. Ironically, you're not producing a positive outcome. You're getting a very subpar outcome that's only maybe slightly better than the terrible outcome that you were getting before. It also requires a lot more effort because preventing a habit does not have a trigger, unlike producing a habit. When you're preventing a habit, you're going to have to constantly be thinking about it throughout the entire game. But with a trigger, your mind is only active whenever that trigger appears in your game, so it takes a lot less conscious effort to do the habit instead of preventing a habit. It's impossible to avoid building bad habits entirely. You're going to have them. There's not a single League player that doesn't have bad habits. Name off any pro player, streamer that you like, I don't care who it is, I guarantee you they do. Especially when you take into account that League has changing variables. Champions change, the map changes, ADCs don't though, because they're dumb. Regardless of what is changing, it's going to produce some bad habits, whether you like it or not. Champions get stronger and weaker over time. Maybe split pushing is really strong now, but weaker in a few months, or the value of ganks could change because of catch-up XP being removed or added in. It could become harder to gank because they move the walls. Every change affects what makes a habit good or bad, but even if everything was remained static, and League was a completely patchless game, there's so many variables in League that you have to entertain, like the changing team compositions, there's no way you're not going to have bad habits. So give up on that utopian dream and instead focus on building as many good habits as you can, which produce more of positive outcomes than trying to prevent a million bad habits that could theoretically occur. There will be mental strain from overthinking because you're going to be trying so hard to think of this habit, that habit, along with many others. Remove this whole list of things to try to avoid by instead focusing on one or two things that you're like, hey, I want to try this. This sounds like a good idea. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. We'll see. If it does work, I'll try it again. If it doesn't, that's fine. I'll go into the next thing. That way, all you're thinking about is good things instead of just bad things. So you'll come out with a positive mindset instead of thinking purely about the negatives. When your focus is not on doing anything bad, all you're going to think about is how bad you are as a player because your thoughts are purely on those negatives, instead of thinking how good you are or how much you've improved because you can show various concepts that you've started to implement into your gameplay. This ties into my previous video about perfectionism. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you check it out. But the point that I'm getting at is with trying to avoid bad habits, you're trying to play perfectly from the beginning, instead of understanding you are going to make mistakes. Embrace the fact that you're going to be making those mistakes and continue to work through different scenarios in your games while gaining the experience to then be able to make smart decisions on what you believe is the correct play in each given scenario. Not assessing all the different possible bad plays, but just one play that you think is really good and better than the other ones that you were considering. Climbing does not require perfection or 1v9ing, anything like that. You just have to consistently play better than the average player of your elo. I figured I'd bring back the Myths of League series that I made a couple videos for a few months ago. While I do have some ideas for future videos, if you know any common myths within the League community that you would like for me to discuss, please let me know in the comments below. As always, if you're interested in getting free coaching by me in either top lane or jungle, the information for my Discord server is in the video description.